Morning everybody, welcome to IndyCar on this Wednesday morning. My name's Gordon Ross and, well, I hate to do this to you again, but unfortunately we have to talk about the B word again, Brexit. The number of things that are going on at the moment and the number of potential options that are available is absolutely mind-boggling, and the possible ramifications of each one of these potential futures is also mind-bogglingly complicated. But let me try and distill this down a little bit so that we all have a bit of a grip on reality at the moment. After the Speaker of the House's intervention the day before yesterday, when John Bercow said that Mrs May could not bring her deal back to Parliament unless it was substantially improved or changed, that has thrown the Conservative Party, or I should say the Prime Minister's plans for Brexit into complete turmoil. Her entire strategy was destroyed by Bercow's action the other day, and that's left the Tory government and the Cabinet frantically firefighting, trying to find a way out of the new cul-de-sac that the Tory government's managed to get itself into this time. In we're living in a country where the government is no longer functioning as a government. It is really just a small cabal of very confused individuals who are trying desperately to minimise the damage caused by previous Prime Minister David Cameron when he very foolishly decided to let the Conservative Party fight its European internal conflict in public and encourage the public to participate. And the result of that was the public did participate, and the English public in particular wanted to leave the European Union. A very unexpected result for the Conservatives, who hadn't actually banked on anybody wanting to leave the European Union at all. So there's no plan, there never was a plan, and those of the various political pundits who have a conspiracy theory that the Conservatives originally wanted Brexit so that they did not have to close down tax loopholes or to pay their pensioners double what they're currently paying. I think, to be honest with you, that the Tories weren't as bright as that. I don't think they were smart enough to come up with a strategy as brave as that and actually carry it through. I think what's happening is entirely down to incompetence and dithering. And the place we're at now is the last week before Brexit, before either we are kicked out on our backsides, and probably deservedly so, or we go begging for some additional time to try and force a deal through the House of Commons. Now, it looks like, from what I can see of the various pronouncements coming out of Downing Street, that Mrs May will go to the European Parliament tomorrow for a summit at which she is going to ask for a short, and they have said short, extension to Article 50, potentially up to 3 months. Now that would take you to about the end of May, beginning of June. Now if it went longer than that, if it went past, say, about the 22nd of May, England would run up against the problem of having to fight a European general election and actually elect some members of the European Parliament, a parliament which the country of England has voted that it doesn't want to be a part of anymore. So it makes the UK even more of a laughingstock than it already is. So we have to do something. The English government has to do something in the next 9 days in order to try and get us out of the European Union in a relatively orderly fashion, or face the absolute derision of the entire rest of the planet when we are unceremoniously thrown out by the prince in scruff of the neck, because that is what we would deserve. So she goes to Europe tomorrow and she asks, or rather I should say begs them to give her another, 3 months? And they say, okay, but on one condition, and that is that you force the deal through the Commons this week. Now, there will be a condition on it, because the European Union will not grant indefinite delays any further. They've already delayed. This is the third chance that the UK has had to get this right. Now, how difficult can it be? They had a majority for leave, clear majority, right? And all they have to do is vote the deal through. But for some reason, the population of England want one thing, but the government doesn't. The government is deliberately dragging its feet, and the Parliament doesn't want Brexit to happen. So we've got the electorate who want Brexit to happen, and we've got a Parliament of their representatives who they voted for, who they expect to deliver Brexit, deliberately not delivering Brexit. And we're in the last chance saloon now in the next few days. So I guarantee you now that Mrs May is going to come back, probably tomorrow, come back with this extension, with the proviso that she must force through the agreement that has been reached with Europe. If that fails, I don't see the European Union wanting to bail her out. And I think that if she doesn't get the deal through, we will leave without a deal. Now, this has always been the strategy of the Prime Minister, was to reduce the number of options down to 2. And eventually, the Parliament in England would have to vote for it. Otherwise, we would crash out of the European Union with nothing. And that is what nobody really wants, except the very hardest of hard Brexiters who actually want no deal with Europe whatsoever. But most normal human beings with an ounce of rationality realise that a hard no-deal Brexit without any plan at all is going to wipe hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of jobs out over the next few years, as the effects of having no trade deal with 27 other countries finally bites. And not just the 27 other countries. Remember, as a member of the European Union, Britain also has trade deals with 70 other countries which were negotiated by the EU. So it's not just 27, it's over 100. 100 nearly. Sorry, not over 100, just under 100 trade deals are going to be wiped off the British statute. But we won't have any trading partners in a no-deal Brexit. No-deal Brexit doesn't mean that we don't exit. No-deal Brexit means we get kicked out with nothing, no friends, no trading partners, and no way of doing business with the rest of the world. Even, believe it or not, on World Trade Organization rules. You can follow World Trade Organization rules, but remember the UK is not a member of the World Trade Organization, so that's not an option either. So we're actually out with no mates, not even in the WTO. We'd have nothing, zero, zip, nada. The only trade deals that the UK has managed to do so far are with 3 small countries, and I think one of them includes Israel. So if you fancy Israel being your main trading partner, then wonderful. But I don't see that as being a great big solution to the problem. And if you want your other trading partner to be Donald Trump, then wonderful. But can you imagine the UK being in a trade agreement with just America and Israel? That really is not going to help us very much. Okay, so what will happen next? Mrs May comes back with this and she puts it before the House with this change to the agreement, the change being that there's now an extension to the agreement. I'm sure the British government and the British Parliament, with its complete lack of any rules or regulations governing anything at all, can make up a rule that will allow people to circumvent John Bercow's intervention now and force this deal to another vote. Will it pass? Will it not? Well, there's a 50-50 chance. So we're now in a crapshoot between a bad deal Brexit and a no deal Brexit, which is precisely where May wanted us to be. And it's going to happen at the 11th hour. It's literally going to go all the way up to the 28th, 29th, at which point, if there's a vote to leave with this bad deal, then Brexit goes ahead in possibly the most anticlimactic but least popular way possible. And I honestly believe that when this Brexit deal was designed and created by the Tories, it was designed and created to be self-defeating. In other words, the red lines were put in there to teach Brexiters a lesson that you can't have a good Brexit. And the red lines have created a Brexit deal which isn't good, so that it teaches these Brexiters this lesson that they can't have a good Brexit. The trouble with all of this is that that might be teaching the Brexiters a lesson, but the rest of us are all paying for this. We in Scotland have had no input in this at all. We have actually voted against it in every single constituency across Scotland was unanimously not for Brexit. There was no exceptions. Every single constituency in Scotland voted against Brexit. And yet despite that, somehow or other, 10 pro-UK party members have got themselves elected in Scotland and are voting for Brexit, even though their constituency didn't vote for Brexit. They're forcing it through. There's a huge disconnection between what people actually vote for in this country and what the politicians decide we're allowed to have. And because of that, even if Brexit was to not happen at all, if it was called off, and I'll be coming back to that subject in a minute, incidentally, but if it was called off completely and didn't happen, that does not mean that there is not a very strong argument now for independence, simply because the amount of money, and it's believed to have cost at least £4.5 billion so far, wasted on this Brexit nonsense that's been going on for nearly 3 years now. The British government has been paralysed with fear and dithering and indecision for 3 whole years, and in the meantime, the British, what would we call it, for want of a better word, the English, economy has been going down the toilet, not just circling the drain, but actually falling down it. The Scottish economy, by complete contrast, which is being run by a government and a parliament which is competent and has been elected and is delivering what it said, is doing great. Our economy is booming, our export orders are growing, we have a positive balance of payments, we have a surplus, we are basically doubling our GDP, our growth rate is twice that of the rest of the UK, and so you can see now how things are so very different in these two different countries. Now the problem is, as I said, Brexit could actually be cancelled. Now, I know it sounds like a wacky idea, but imagine that Mrs May can't get her deal through, and she decided unilaterally at that point to revoke or rescind Article 50, in other words, to stop Brexit and then resign. Now, if she does that, that will force a general election, and the Brexit clock will be stopped at the 11th hour, so we won't leave. But if the Tories are re-elected with a new leader, and they still have the mandate of the public for Brexit, then that new Tory leader can re-trigger Article 50 and start the whole 2-year malarkey off again. Now, that's not the end of the suffering, because if that doesn't happen, but if we cannot agree to the Brexit deal this coming week, and it doesn't happen, we might want to then ask for a 2 or a 3 year extension. Now, if we did that with the European Union at that point, then there'd have to be a very coherent plan for what was going to happen. There would need to be changes to the Brexit deal agreed with the European Union. It would need to be completely redone, and the red lines would have to be removed for the European Union to grant that 3-year stay of execution, because it is the red lines that prevent the EU from giving us a better deal. Not anything that the EU is doing, but what the UK government has restricted Brexit to. But imagine for a moment that that happened, that Mrs May's deal didn't go through, and she was faced with the choice of either rescinding Article 50 and stopping Brexit and resigning, which I don't think she would like to do, or allowing Brexit to happen with no deal, which could possibly still happen. That's about a 50% chance of that now. Or she goes to the European Union and says, look, I can't make this work. We have decided now that we are going to drop our red lines completely and we want to renegotiate the deal. Can we have another 2 years to do that? The European Union might then allow them to do that. But in the meantime, no matter what happens, if Brexit runs over into June, then Britain will have to then fight a European general election and elect members of the European Parliament, which The English people have voted to leave, and the Scottish people have voted to stay in, and Northern Ireland has voted to stay in, and Wales, although initially wanted to leave, is now beginning to have second thoughts about. And this is the whole problem with Brexit, with the United Kingdom, and with the global situation as it is at the moment. There is a perfect storm brewing just now. The world economy has stopped growing completely because the wealthiest people on the planet have now exploited so many other poor people in the world that they don't have enough money now for the wealthy people to economize more of it, or to get more of it out of them through profits. So global capitalism has hit the buffers and no longer works. There's no more growth left in the global economy, and at the same time America is withdrawing itself from all its international obligations, all the international organizations, the trading arrangements, and it's closing its doors to trade. Now, once protectionism starts to take hold on the planet, everybody starts to do it. The UK has voted to do it, but won't do it because it's dithering. And the problem is we've got English people who want one thing, Scottish people who want a completely different thing, Northern Irish people who want what the Scots want, which is a completely different thing. The Welsh really don't know where they stand at the moment, and they're too close to London really for the English government to worry about. You've got a mess. You've got a global chaotic mess. And add to that, you've got the Russians putting out disturbing untrue stories, putting out true stories mixed in with them, and confusing the entire European Union. So it's in a mess. France is in a mess because of the taxation laws that Macron is bringing in, and the resistance on the streets to that with the yellow vests. That is ongoing. France is in turmoil. The rest of the European Union is struggling to hold itself together. And in the middle of all of this, we've got this Brexit carry on at the same time. It is a perfect storm. But the only way out of it for the Scots is actually just to get off the merry-go-round, get off the roundabout. Why keep going around and around on this Brexit merry-go-round with the English when plainly we don't want it? And even if Brexit doesn't happen, we definitely should not stick with the European Union. We should definitely not stick with the UK, because it has proved itself unable to govern. It cannot govern 4 countries, and it cannot force 4 countries to do things against their will. It's not possible. You can't force entire populations to do what you want unless you actually go to war with them. That is the only way you can force 5.5 million Scots to do what English people want them to do. And it's the only way you'll probably get whatever it is, 1 and a wee bit million Northern Irish people to do what England wants them to do. And the weird thing is, in Northern Ireland, the party that represents Northern Ireland at the moment in Westminster is a minority party in its own neighbourhood in Northern Ireland. It doesn't even represent the majority of the people. It's just that the opposition is split in Northern Ireland and can't coalesce to fight back against the DUP. So we've got all of these opposing forces all straining in opposite directions, tearing the UK apart. And the only real solution for this is for the UK to part company, because everybody in it wants completely different things. It's not just a divorce. This is like a 4-way divorce. This is like a student flat where everybody's had disagreements and nobody can agree who's going to pay the rent and who pays the phone bill and who's been eating whose food. They all want different things, and they all want to split up. And I'm afraid that the United Kingdom is just going to have to wake up and smell the coffee. That Brexit is not something that is going to bring the country together. It can't. It can't bring the country together. For all Mrs May saying that we must unite behind Brexit, well, why must we unite behind Brexit? Why? Why should we suffer our economy being smashed to bits, and thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Scottish jobs being lost just so our English neighbours can shut up the shutters and keep out some Europeans that they don't like? Well, no, we don't have to put up with it. Nobody has to put up with that. This is supposed to be the mother of parliaments, the home of democracy. And yet the democracy has voted for Brexit. And British politicians won't even let their own voters Brexit. I mean, what is it coming to? They want Scotland to Brexit, but they won't actually carry out the Brexit that their own voters have voted for. They can't even agree to it. They can't even agree amongst themselves to do it, and they can't agree how to do it. I have never come across a government and a parliament such as Westminster which cannot decide anything. It's like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, about to commit suicide, and paralysed with fear and indecision. Something in him is saying, well, I've decided to jump off this cliff, but I'm too scared to do it, and I'm too scared to jump because I don't know what's at the bottom of it, so I'm just going to stand on the edge of this cliff forever, because that's what Brexit is. It's the United Kingdom standing on the edge of the cliff forever, it seems, unable to move, too terrified of its own electorate, too terrified of its own decisions to leave the European Union to budge. Why should the European Union help us any further? I don't think they will. I think they're going to give Mrs May this tentative 3-month extension on the strict understanding that she must force through her deal this week or all bets are off. Because, believe it or not, the European Union is not going to be hurt as much by Brexit as people imagine. Yes, it will hurt them, but remember, there are 27 countries in the EU. In the UK, there are 2 countries in the UK, Scotland and England. Northern Ireland isn't a country, it's it's not even a province. It's 6 counties that were annexed by the British government. And Wales, unfortunately, is a conquered nation which has been basically taken over and occupied by England and is now being kind of subsumed into it. They don't have much power at the moment in Wales. At the end of the day, you can't make 4 countries do the bidding of 1. And this is a lesson that the English have got to learn, that they can't force the smaller Celtic nations to do their will anymore. It's not possible. And the Scottish Government and the Scottish MPs and Scotland in general is a different country from England. It's not Britain, it's not the UK, it's Scotland. And Scotland says, no, we don't want to do it. We're not going to do it. And if you want to leave and have your Brexit, that's fine, but we'll be going in the opposite direction. You'll be doing it on your Todd. There's nothing wrong with that. But the European Union, as I said earlier, they're not going to be hurt by this as much as England will be. England is one of those places which put all of its eggs in one basket. Service industries, banking, some white-collar, high-tech jobs, and that's about it. That's all they've got. They've got no real exports. They have a bad balance of payments deficit. Well, they're importing far more than they export. They're borrowing so heavily, £17 trillion in debt. I mean, I don't know how they managed to keep their credit rating. But England runs on debt. Debt borrowing that accelerates every year, so the debt goes up and up and up and up and up and up. And they're expecting Scotland to pay for that debt. Again, why should we? It wasn't our decision to get into debt. We didn't take out the loans. We don't run our country that way. We run our country in the black. We don't borrow money. We get our investment through business investment and through generating profits and generating surpluses. So again, we're not going to be hurt by Brexit. Only England will be hurt by Brexit. They're hurting it themselves. The European Union is not afraid to play chicken with England, and they will win because there are 27 of them and there's only 1 of England. When it comes down to it, on the 28th of this month, if we haven't Brexited with this deal that Mrs May had negotiated, then I guarantee you that the European Union will wash its hands of us. They'll say, sod it, blame us if you want, but you brought this on yourself. And when you're kicked out of Europe and you've got no friends and no trade deals and your country's a mess and your economy collapses and there's rioting in your streets, look at yourselves in the mirror and ask yourselves who caused this. It wasn't the Europeans. The Europeans didn't force Britain out. They tried to help repeatedly. 3 times they tried to assist Mrs May to get this deal through. And 3 times the British politicians have sabotaged it. British politicians are the ones who don't want to carry out the will of the English people. And I'm saying very specifically, it's the will of the English people, that's not the Scots. That's about where we're at. I think we've got a week of normal life left in Britain, and then all hell will break loose. We're either going to be forced into the humiliation of European elections and waiting another 2 or 3 years, hoping that if we drop the red line somehow we'll get a Brexit deal. But whatever happens, it's still a mess, and it's still causing damage to the country, and it will continue to cause damage to the country for years and years and years to come. It's time for the British politicians to get off the fence, get their fingers out, and actually do what the electorate has asked them to do, and get on with Brexit. I don't agree with Brexit, and most of Scotland doesn't agree with Brexit, but one thing we are agreed on is they should get on with it. They voted for it, they wanted it, then do it, and let's move on, because we're always telling us that after 2014 we should accept the result and move on. Well, we did, and we have. We're expecting the UK to do the same thing, to accept the vote that they made, to carry out what they said they would do, and let us all move on. And we will be moving on to independence, regardless of Section 30s or Article 50s or anything else. We will move on, because Scotland doesn't have any kind of option here. If we don't leave England at the point where Brexit happens, then we are going to be basically chained to the sinking ship. We will be the people trapped in steerage on the Titanic, like in the movie where the Irish passengers were trapped in the steerage compartment in the back of the ship, and they couldn't get out, and they were forced to go down with the ship. Well, we do not need to go down with this ship. We have a very healthy economy. We're not dependent on oil. We can't be dependent on oil because we don't get any of the benefits of oil. They all get sucked down to London and wasted paying off debt. Even the national insurance payments that you're making at the moment, that national insurance fund is full, and everything that you're paying into it at the moment is being used to pay off debt in the UK, not to supply you with a pension and not to help you with your health and your hospital treatment. So there are a lot of things going on behind your back at the moment you don't even know about, but they're happening. Okay, I'm starting to get annoyed, so I'm going to quit here, but just remember that what happens in the next 9 days is not Scotland's doing, and we have the right now to choose what we do next, and we do not have to follow England's example and go down the drain, or down with the ship, whatever analogy you want to use. But that's it, the chickens have come home to roost, and I do not believe that the EU is going to blink first on this. Mrs May has played chicken with the EU right up to the wire, expecting the EU to cave at the 11th hour and to pluck her Brexit from the jaws of defeat. I don't think they will. I don't see why they should. They didn't cause it, and I don't see the 27 other leaders of these other countries wanting to give them any help at all. Why should they? They can't decide anything. I wouldn't trust the Tories to sit on a toilet seat the right way around at the moment. I don't think they could even decide that. Anyway, I'll see you later. Let's see what happens later in the week. But as I say, I don't hold out much hope. I think we're either going to get Mrs May's deal or a hard Brexit. I don't see any other real options on the table anymore. See you later. Bye-bye.